I never thought my own children would speak to me like that, but the night it happened, their words cut deeper than any knife. Dad, stop pretending you have control. My daughter sneered, arms crossed, eyes cold. We already decided. The mansion goes to us. Just sign the papers. My son didn't even look ashamed. Your old dad. You should be grateful we're handling things before it's too late. Before it's too late. Those 4 words echoed in my chest like a cruel prophecy. I remember sitting at the dining table, the same table where I once fed them, taught them, laughed with them. Now those chairs held strangers wearing the faces of the people I raised. My daughter's husband slid a thick folder toward me, property transfer papers, my mansion, my land, my life's work. Just sign, Dad. He whispered like a serpent, it's better for everyone. When I hesitated, my daughter's voice rose to a shout. You don't belong in that mansion anymore. The mansion, the home I built with my bare hands, brick by brick, after their mother died. The home where I mourned, healed, and rebuilt our lives. Now they wanted it like it was some prize they'd earned. I pushed the papers back, and suddenly the room erupted. Accusations, insults, mockery, you're selfish. You're losing your mind. You don't deserve this property anyway. My son yelled the final blow. You're giving it to us whether you like it or not. I sat there in silence, watching the people I loved turn into vultures, hovering over a corpse they expected to be mine. That night, I didn't sleep, not because of fear, but because of a decision I made while staring at the mansion through my window. If my children only valued me for my wealth, then maybe the mansion didn't belong to them. Maybe it didn't belong to me either. Maybe it belonged to someone who would respect it. The next morning, I called my lawyer. And by the time my children returned, ready to force me again, their inheritance was already gone, donated to a shelter that needed it more than they ever did. But that wasn't even the biggest twist. The real shock came when they learned about the secret will. When my wife Amina passed away 15 years ago, the world didn't end, but it certainly dimmed. Everything I knew about life, family, and love seemed to collapse into a single, suffocating silence. I remember waking up each morning in a house that suddenly felt too big, too empty, too quiet. The kids were still young. Then my daughter, Sarah, was 16, and my son, Cameron, only 13. They were devastated, of course, but children heal faster than adults. Or maybe they just bury things deeper. For me, grief became fuel. I refused to let my wife's death become the downfall of our family. So I threw myself into work construction jobs during the day, side projects at night. I didn't just want to survive. I wanted to build something strong enough, beautiful enough, meaningful enough, to honor her memory. That's how the mansion came to life. It didn't start as a mansion. It started as a simple house on a dusty piece of land that nobody wanted. But I worked on it little by little, saving every rupee, every ounce of strength. I laid bricks with my own hands. I carved the wooden railings myself. I planted every tree in the courtyard, each one named after a memory with my wife. Over the years, the house grew, room by room, floor by floor, garden by garden. People began calling it a mansion long before I thought it deserved the name. It wasn't about wealth. It was about healing. I wanted the kids to have a place where they felt protected, where they remembered their mother's gentleness. And for a while, it worked. We ate together every night. We shared stories. We leaned on each other. But as they grew older, something changed. Sarah became distant first. She started hanging out with wealthy friends' kids who looked at our hard-earned home and called it old-fashioned. She began talking about status, modern life, better lifestyles. I didn't blame her. She wanted more than I could give. But slowly, she stopped seeing the mansion as the home her parents built and started seeing it as an asset. Cameron, too, drifted. He wanted quick success, shiny things, shortcuts. While I talked about hard work and patience, he talked about easy money and big dreams. He wasn't a bad kid, just lost, chasing illusions. By the time they reached their late 20s, both of them had moved out emotionally, even though they still visited physically. They came home for dinners, birthdays, and holidays, but their eyes no longer softened when they looked at the walls. They didn't touch the carved railings the way they used to. They didn't sit under the trees named after their mother. The mansion had become something else for them. Not a home, not a memory, not love, just a property, and I didn't realize how deep that shift ran. Until the day my lawyer called with news that changed everything. The lawyer's call lingered in my mind for days. He didn't give details, just said he needed to discuss something important about the property. His tone was serious, but calm. I tried not to worry, but a strange heaviness settled in my chest. And almost as if life had perfect timing, that was the week my daughter and her husband began visiting more often. At first, I thought they were just being caring, but caring doesn't usually come with calculators. Baba, you know, property values are skyrocketing these days. My son-in-law, Faisal, said one afternoon as he sipped tea on my balcony like he owned the view, "You should think about simplifying your assets." I looked at him. Simplifying how? He smiled the way someone smiles before delivering a rehearsed speech. Well, selling a few things or transferring them while you're still capable, a simple word, but it stabbed deeper than he intended. Or maybe exactly as he intended. Sarah came and sat beside him, nodding in agreement. "Dad, we're just trying to help you. Managing a huge mansion alone is a lot. Why not let us handle it? You can relax, enjoy life." I wanted to believe her. But her eyes, those were the eyes of someone planning, not caring. My son Cameron followed soon after. He arrived with a smile too wide, hugging me too tightly, speaking too sweetly. "Dad, I've been thinking, what if we look at your will together, not for now, but for the future, just to avoid confusion." Confusion, that was their favorite word lately. I didn't answer. And he took my silence as uncertainty instead of suspicion. "Look, Dad," he said softly, "Sarah and I, we want to protect what you've built, but we need clarity. You know how mothers-in-law and extended family start asking questions about inheritance." There it was. Inheritance, the word they had been circling like hungry birds. I should have spoken up, but I didn't want to believe my own children thought of me as nothing more than a signature on a deed. The next week, the conversations got bolder. Faisal began sending me YouTube videos about estate planning. Sarah started bringing real estate brochures, circling luxury apartments she and her husband might consider buying. Cameron asked me twice in one day if I kept spare copies of my property papers. Their politeness began to fade too. Sarah snapped at me for misplacing a remote. Cameron sighed loudly if I walked slowly. Faisal corrected me like I was a confused old man. Then, one evening, everything became painfully clear. I was walking past the living room when I heard their voices, low, sharp, urgent. "Once he signs, we're set." Faisal whispered, "He won't resist." Sarah replied, "He trusts me." And if he does, Cameron added, "we'll convince him he's not thinking straight." I froze. My own children planning my inheritance while I was still alive, planning what to do with my home, before I was even gone. After hearing their whispered conversation, I felt something inside me shift, not break, not yet, but tilt just enough for the truth to slide into place. My children weren't worried about my health. They weren't concerned about my future. They were planning their own, and my mansion, my wife's memory, my life's work was the centerpiece of their plans. I didn't confront them right away. Instead, I pretended everything was normal. Sometimes silence reveals more than questions. Over the next few days, their behavior grew bolder. Sarah arrived early one morning with a notebook filled with numbers. "Dad, I've been thinking," she said, flipping pages like a financial advisor. "If we sell the mansion, we can get at least 20 crores. We can buy you a small place near a clinic, something manageable. A small place," I repeated quietly. She smiled as if talking to a child. "Dad, this house is too big for you now. It's okay to let go." Let go, she meant give it up, hand it over, step aside. Cameron came later that day with a laptop. "Dad, I found a buyer," he said excitedly. "A businessman from Karachi. He's offering more than market price, but he wants a quick deal. So we'll need your signature fast." My voice was calm when I asked, "And who told you I agreed to sell?" He looked annoyed, not embarrassed. "Dad, don't make it difficult. We're trying to help you. You don't understand these things." The arrogance in his tone, I barely recognized him, but the real betrayal came the next evening. I walked into the study and found Sarah, Cameron, and Faisal huddled around my locked drawer, the one where I kept important papers. The drawer was open. Sarah jumped. Cameron pretended he wasn't doing anything. Faisal closed his laptop slowly like he had been caught stealing. "What are you doing?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Sarah stepped forward. "Dad, don't get upset. We just needed to check if the property documents were safe. You forget things sometimes." "I forget nothing," I said quietly. Faisal added, "We're only looking out for you." I stared at them, feeling an unfamiliar coldness settle inside me. Not anger yet, just clarity. They weren't looking out for me. They were looking out for themselves. I didn't argue. I simply locked the drawer again and walked away, and that was when I saw it. A white envelope slipped under my bedroom door. No name, no stamp, just my address. Inside was a single line written in clear, firm handwriting. "Call me. It's urgent about your property." Signed, "Your lawyer." My heart tightened. Whatever was coming. It was bigger than I realized. I didn't sleep that night. The lawyer's note sat on my bedside table like a silent alarm. By morning, I had already made up my mind to visit him, but before I could even step outside, the pressure from my children began. It was as if they sensed I was slipping out of their grip. Sarah arrived first. She didn't even say salam. She walked in with a stack of papers. "Dad, we need to be practical," she said firmly. "I talked to Faisal's cousin. He's in real estate. He says the longer we wait, the harder it will be to sell. The house is too old. Prices are good right now. We sell harder." None of those words included me, the actual owner. Then she placed the papers in front of me. "Just sign these consents so we can start the process." I looked at the papers, not simple consents. These were authorization documents giving her and her husband the right to negotiate on my behalf. I pushed them back. "Dad," she sighed, "don't be dramatic. Everyone your age starts transferring assets. You should be grateful we're helping." Helping. The word felt like poison. Before I could respond, Cameron walked in, looking strangely cheerful. "Dad, I need your ATM card. I'll withdraw some cash for groceries." Groceries. The fridge was full. And, he added casually, "I need your bank passbook. The insurance guy wants to check a detail." That was the moment I realized they weren't just after the mansion, they wanted everything. "Give me your card, Dad," Cameron pressed. "No," I said clearly. His cheerful mask fell. He stepped closer, voice tightening. "Why are you making this difficult? We are your children. If we don't handle things, who will? You can barely manage the house." The tone wasn't frustration. It was entitlement. Sarah joined in. "Dad, you're being unreasonable. We're doing all this for your good. You don't want people to think you're not. Stable. Stable." There it was again, the word they used when they wanted to corner me. I stood up slowly. I said no, that should be enough, but it wasn't. Their faces darkened simultaneously, like they had rehearsed this reaction. Cameron's voice rose. "Fine. If you won't cooperate, we'll find another way." I didn't respond. I walked toward the door, intending to leave for the lawyer's office, but as I reached the hallway, I heard Sarah whisper sharply behind me, "He's not listening. We need Plan B. Today." Plan B. The words hit me like a cold gust. What exactly was Plan B, and how far were they willing to go? I didn't wait to find out. I grabbed my keys and left the house unaware that their Plan B was already in motion, and it involved questioning my sanity. By the time I returned from the lawyer's office, I already sensed something was wrong. My gate, usually quiet and still, stood open. 3 unfamiliar cars were parked outside. For a moment, I wondered if I had stepped into the wrong driveway, but no. This was my home, my sanctuary. When I stepped inside, everything changed. Sarah rushed toward me with exaggerated panic. "Dad, finally, where were you? We've been so worried." Cameron appeared behind her, shaking his head dramatically. "Dad, you can't disappear like this. It's not safe." Before I could ask anything, I noticed the strangers. A woman in a white coat, a man holding a clipboard, another woman with a sympathetic smile plastered on her face. "Who are they?" I asked slowly. Sarah put a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that would have felt kind years ago, but now felt like control. "Dad, these are specialists, mental health experts. They're here to evaluate you, for your own safety." My stomach dropped. "This is Plan B. I asked quietly. Cameron frowned, pretending not to understand. Dad, you've been forgetting things, getting confused, acting strange. We're only trying to help. Help? Everything they did was wrapped in that poisonous word. The woman in the white coat stepped forward. Sir, your children are concerned about your well-being. They say you've been struggling to manage daily tasks. I stared at her, speechless for a moment. My children are lying. Sarah gasped theatrically, pressing a hand to her chest. Dad, how can you say that? We just want you safe. Cameron jumped in. You wandered off today without telling anyone. You could have fallen or gotten lost. I went to my lawyer. I said firmly. That sentence hit them like a slap. Their eyes widened a flash of fear, panic, but they recovered quickly. Sarah's voice shifted from fake concern to icy authority. Dad, please cooperate. Let them evaluate you. If you don't, it will only prove you're unstable. The audacity of it all using twisted logic to trap me. The woman doctor opened her clipboard. Sir, do you know today's date? Yes. Do you know where you are? Yes. In my own home, which my children are trying to take. The doctor glanced at Sarah and Cameron. They exchanged pitying looks on purpose, pretending I was confused, delusional. Faisal stepped forward next, acting like the calm mediator. Uncle, we're doing this so you don't hurt yourself or make bad decisions. I clenched my jaw so tightly I felt my teeth ache. Bad decisions. Like refusing to hand over everything I owned, the doctor tried again. Sir, your children mentioned you misplaced important papers, forgot appointments, and accused them without reason. I never misplaced anything, I said sharply, but I did find them rummaging through my locked drawer. That sentence finally cracked their act. Sarah's face twitched, Cameron's eyes narrowed. The doctor hesitated, clearly unsure now. Before they could rebuild their performance, I spoke slowly, clearly. You think you can stage an intervention, question my sanity, make me look incapable so you can control my property. Silence heavy, uncomfortable, exposed. Then Cameron stepped forward, face hard. If you don't cooperate, Dad, we'll take legal action. A threat from the child I raised. But before I could respond, someone knocked on the door. When I opened it, my lawyer stood there, expression serious, envelope in hand, and he said one sentence that changed everything. Sir, we need to talk. I found something very important. My lawyer, Mr. Nadim, stepped inside with a calm seriousness that filled the entire room. The so-called experts immediately stiffened. Sarah and Cameron exchanged startled glances, and Faisal's confident expression faltered. Nadim greeted everyone politely but firmly. Good afternoon. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Oh, well, we were just. Sarah stuttered, suddenly unsure of her performance. Helping our father. Cameron finished quickly. He's been confused lately. Nadim nodded slowly, as if he had heard the biggest lie of his career. I see. Interesting timing. He turned to me then. Sir, may I speak with you privately? Before I could answer, Sarah stepped in front of us. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of us. We handle his matters now. Nadim raised one eyebrow. Oh, that's strange. According to the documents I have, he still handles his own matters. There was a spark behind his words. A warning shot. Faisal tried to intervene. Actually, we've been discussing property arrangements recently. Uncle wants us to support him in decision-making. I shook my head immediately. I never said that. Nadim smiled. Just a thin, razor-sharp line. Good, then we proceed. He opened the envelope he brought and handed me a file. Inside were photocopies of my property deed, and 3 forged versions. I felt my hands go cold. Sarah's face drained of color. Cameron swallowed hard. Your children, Nadim said flatly, have been attempting to prepare fraudulent transfer papers. These would allow them to sell your mansion without your approval. The room fell into absolute silence. Sarah tried to laugh, but her voice cracked. That's ridiculous. We would never. Nadim cut her off. Your fingerprints are on the forged copies. These were found in an office belonging to a real estate agent connected to your husband. Faisal's face turned ashen. Cameron stepped forward angrily. You can't accuse us like this. We were just helping Dad manage by hiring someone to produce illegal documents. Nadim asked calmly. Cameron froze. Sarah began to cry. Not out of guilt, but out of fear that her plan was collapsing. This is a misunderstanding. Please let us explain, she pleaded. Nadim ignored the tears completely. Sir, he said to me, I believe your children were planning to corner you into signing the final version, legally, emotionally, or through intimidation. I looked directly at my children. I heard your conversation the other day about me signing whether I like it or not. Their expressions shifted from fear to anger. Cameron's voice lowered dangerously. So what if we were preparing things early? You're old. Someone has to take charge. There it was. The truth, blunt, ugly, shameless. Nadim tapped the file. Sir, we need to take action before they escalate. They are not stopping anytime soon. Faisal stepped forward suddenly, face red. You have no right to interfere. This is a family matter. Nadim turned his cold gaze on him. And legal fraud is my matter. Faisal clenched his fists. I saw something in his eyes. A threat, a warning, a final push into desperation. I felt the air shift. The trap they had built for me wasn't just about papers. It was about control, about power, about forcing me into a corner. And with Nadim exposing everything, I knew something dangerous was coming next. Their plans had failed, so they were about to create new ones. After the confrontation with my children, the house fell into a tense silence. The so-called experts quietly slipped out, uncomfortable with how quickly the truth had surfaced. Sarah and Cameron retreated to the living room, whispering angrily among themselves. Faisal paced in circles, muttering under his breath, but Nadim was unmoved. He sat calmly at my dining table, hands folded, waiting for me to join him. Sir, he said softly, there's something you need to know. Something I have kept safe for years, as per your wife's wishes. My breath caught. My wife? I whispered. He nodded. Yes. Amina left behind more than memories. She left instructions, a will, one you never saw. The room seemed to tilt. A will. My wife had never mentioned one. Nadim placed a sealed envelope on the table, yellowed, edges slightly worn, but still intact. I was told, he continued, to give you this only when your children showed signs of greed. She feared something like this might happen. My heart squeezed painfully. She had worried about this, even back then. Even while she was alive, with trembling hands, I opened the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter, her handwriting, neat, gentle, familiar. Just seeing the curves of her words made my eyes sting. My love. The letter began, if you are reading this, it means our children have forgotten the values we tried to teach them. I swallowed hard. I know you will build something beautiful in my memory, and I know you will protect it. So I made a request in my will, not for me but for you. I looked at the attached document, her official will, signed and registered. She had written, the house and land shall legally belong to my husband alone, with full control, until the day he chooses where it should go. Upon his passing, it will not be divided automatically among the children. Instead, he will decide the final beneficiary. It didn't end there. A second clause stunned me. If the children show aggression, greed, or pressure toward their father, he has my blessing to donate the entire property to charity. Donate to charity. I stared at the words, unable to breathe for a moment. It was as if she was standing beside me, gently placing a hand on my shoulder, whispering, do what is right, not what is expected. Nadim leaned closer. Sir, the will is legally strong. Your wife protected you long before you knew you needed protection. The paper in my hands felt both heavy and liberating. Sarah entered the room suddenly. She froze when she saw the letter. What's that? She demanded. Cameron followed, eyes narrowing. Is that a will? Neither of them hid the panic in their voices. I folded the letter slowly, deliberately. Yes, I said quietly, your mother's will. Their faces whitened. What does it say? Sarah whispered. I looked at them, really looked, and realized this moment would change everything between us. But before I could speak, a sudden noise echoed from outside. A car door slammed. Someone else had arrived, and with them, the truth about who really owned the mansion. The next morning, I went straight to meet my lawyer, Mr. Hamid. I didn't trust myself to wait even a day. What I had found, my wife's hidden will, felt like a ticking bomb. If the children sensed something, they would push harder. And their behavior last night had already shown me how far they were willing to go. When I handed the document to Hamid, he read it twice, then leaned back in his chair with a long exhale. I always admired your wife, he said softly. She was wiser than all of us. I nodded, still trying to absorb everything. What does this mean legally? Does this override the old will? He adjusted his glasses. Her handwritten letter isn't a will. Its instructions connected to a sealed update we filed years ago. My heart stopped. What update? Hamid pulled out a file from his cabinet. Thick, protected, official. He laid it gently on the table. Inside was the actual updated will, the legally binding one my wife had created before she died. And it followed everything she wrote in the handwritten letter. Then Hamid added something that made my head spin. There's more. You mentioned your children have been asking about the deed. I nodded slowly. Hamid opened another folder. Good, because I ran the verification papers you asked for earlier this month. And someone tried to make a fake deed of your mansion. My mouth fell open. A fake. What? He slid the evidence toward me. Forged signatures, forged stamps, forged property documents, and the name on the application was clear. Submitted by Mr. Danish Raza, spouse of MS, Sana, my daughter's husband, her soft, spoken, smiling, respectful husband who always touched my feet when he visited, had tried to steal my house behind my back. I felt a wave of heat spread across my chest. Hamid touched my arm calmly. Don't worry. The property is still legally yours, completely. There's no loophole, no transfer, nothing they can touch. But now, we must act carefully. I leaned back, suddenly exhausted. What do you suggest? We prepare a notice, a legal warning for attempted fraud, and we secure the will. If your children discover this document, they could become unpredictable. Unpredictable. I thought of Sana grabbing my arm. I thought of Camel shouting. I thought of Alina's eyes scanning the rooms like a buyer. Hamid began typing the notice letter. My life, my family, my home, all heading toward a confrontation I never wanted. And yet one more truth remained, one my children didn't know. If they continued down this path, they wouldn't get a single brick of the mansion. When I reached home that evening, the air felt strange, thick, heavy, vibrating with tension. I opened the front door and froze. My children were already there. Sana, Camel, Alina, Danish, all standing in the living room. My documents folder lay open on the coffee table. I felt a cold sensation in my chest. What are you doing? I whispered. Sana lifted the handwritten will, the one I had hidden carefully. We found this, she said coldly. Why didn't you tell us? My throat went dry. Camel stepped forward, anger blazing in his eyes. You're planning to give the mansion to charity, to strangers, to outsiders. Alina scoffed. After everything we've done for you. I wanted to laugh, bitterly, because they had done nothing but take. But I stayed silent. Danish threw another paper onto the table. Hamid's preliminary verification report. You think we don't know what's happening? He shouted. You're making legal moves behind our backs. My heart pounded. This is my house. I have every right. Camel cut me off. No, Abu, this is our future. You're being manipulated. By whom? I asked. They had no answer. Instead, Sana stepped closer, her voice shaking with rage. We won't accept this. You will not give this property away. You will not rewrite anything. You will sign the house over to us. Now, I looked at my children, the same ones I raised, fed, protected, and all I saw were desperate strangers. People who saw me not as a father, but as an obstacle blocking their inheritance. Alina suddenly grabbed my arm. Sit down, we're talking. Danish blocked the doorway. Camel picked up the will and waved it in front of my face. This is not going to happen. We won't allow it. Their voices grew louder, their accusations harsher, their insults more personal. The mansion echoed with a chaos I never imagined would come from my own blood. And then, without raising my voice, I said the sentence that made them all freeze. I've already made my decision. The room fell silent. Alina frowned. What decision? I looked around at the walls that held decades of memories, love, laughter, and loss, and I knew what I needed to do. A decision not made out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of painful, necessary truth. After that explosive confrontation, I knew what I had to do. It wasn't just about protecting a house anymore. It was about protecting my dignity, my peace, and honoring the promise my wife had made in her will. The next morning, I sat down with Mr. Hamid, my lawyer. We discussed my options carefully. The The words from my wife's will echoed in my mind the clause about donating the mansion if my children proved greedy and disrespectful. I realized she had given me the power to protect everything she and I had built, no matter what my children thought. I told Hamid I wanted to donate the mansion not to any stranger, but to a shelter I had heard about years ago. A place for widows and orphans, people who had lost everything but deserved a home. It was a small sanctuary, but one filled with warmth, hope, and love, the very things my children had forgotten. We went together to meet the shelter's director. Walking through those humble halls, seeing the smiles on faces that life had worn down, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. This was the right place for the mansion, not for greed or betrayal, but for kindness and second chances. Back at the lawyer's office, I signed the transfer documents. I looked at the papers carefully. The deed would officially transfer ownership from me to the shelter, effective immediately. There was no turning back, but as I stepped outside the office, my phone rang. It was Sana. Her voice was sharp, desperate. "Abu, what have you done? You can't give away the house. That's our inheritance." I didn't answer. Instead, I braced myself for what I knew was coming. Minutes later, the front door of the mansion burst open. Sana, Camel, Faisal, and Alina stormed in, faces twisted with fury. "You're throwing away our future," Sana screamed, shaking a signed copy of the transfer papers. "How could you betray us like this?" The others shouted too, voices overlapping, accusing, threatening, but I stood firm. I had made my decision. The days that followed were a storm. My children called me every name they could think of: traitor, fool, old man losing his mind. They tried to rally relatives and neighbors against me, spreading lies about my mental state and accusing me of throwing away their birthright. But something surprising happened. The community didn't turn against me. Neighbors who had watched me build that mansion from dust stood by my side. Friends I hadn't seen in years called to offer support. Even strangers who heard the story on local radio sent messages of encouragement. One evening, a group of neighbors gathered at my small sitting room. A young woman who worked at the shelter spoke warmly. "Sir, your gift has changed many lives already. The mansion is now a place where love is stronger than greed." That touched me deeply, but my children were not done. Sana's lawyer sent a letter demanding I reverse the donation, threatening legal action. Camel hired private investigators to dig into my finances, looking for any weakness to exploit. I called Mr. Hamid, who reassured me firmly. "The transfer is legally binding. The will's clause protects you. They don't have a leg to stand on." Then the real pressure began. The children learned about the legal consequences of their actions: attempted forgery, harassment, and threats against me. For the first time, their bravado faltered. One afternoon, Camel came to my door, face pale, voice low. "Abu, we made mistakes. Can we talk?" I looked at him without bitterness. "We will talk, but only when there is respect." Their greed had cost them everything. With the mansion no longer a prison of pain and betrayal, I moved to a small, peaceful home on the outskirts of town. It was nothing like the grand house I had built with my own hands, but it was mine, simple, quiet, full of light. I spent mornings in the garden, planting flowers my wife loved. I read books, walked in the park, and sometimes just sat in silence, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. There were moments of loneliness, yes, but also moments of freedom. One evening, as the sun dipped low, my phone rang. It was Mr. Hamid. "Sir," he said kindly, "I wanted to tell you the shelter has officially welcomed the mansion as its new home. They're planning a ceremony in your honor." I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't felt in years. "And there's something else," he added softly. "I found a letter from your wife. A final message for you." I held my breath as he read aloud. "My dear love, you have been stronger than I ever imagined. Remember, respect matters more than money, and now they know it too. Live in peace." Tears welled in my eyes. I closed my phone and looked out at the fading sky. For the first time in a long time, I felt hope and freedom. It took weeks, maybe even months, to let the dust settle inside my heart. Betrayal isn't just about broken promises or greedy hands grabbing what isn't theirs. It's the slow, painful unraveling of trust. The feeling that the people you once loved have become strangers, focused only on what they can take, not what they can give. I remember sitting alone in the quiet of my small home, replaying every moment. The laughter that once filled the mansion, the gentle voice of my wife reminding me to be patient, the coldness in my children's eyes when the money talk began. The ache was raw, but pain has a way of teaching you what you didn't want to learn. I realized that love alone doesn't always protect you. Sometimes you have to protect yourself. Sometimes you have to stand alone even against your own blood. And so I began healing, not overnight, but step by step. I found strength in small moments, the chirping of birds in my garden, the kindness of neighbors who hadn't abandoned me, and the quiet knowledge that I had done the right thing. Yet, just when I thought the storm had passed, my phone rang one evening. It was Camel, my son. His voice was cold but cautious. "Abu, I need a loan. There's a business opportunity, just a small amount. I promise I'll pay you back." For a moment I was silent. Could I trust him? Was this an attempt to pull me back into their world, or a genuine sign of change? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I said quietly, "I'll think about it." And I knew this was not the end of their attempts. The days that followed, I set new rules for my life, boundaries I hadn't dared to draw before. I told Camel clearly, no more loans, no more pressure. I will support you only if you show respect. With Sana, I stopped answering calls when her tone turned demanding or hurtful. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up, old friends, kind neighbors, even volunteers from the shelter who kept in touch. Slowly, I rebuilt my trust in others, learning that family isn't always blood alone. Sometimes, family is the people who respect you, who stand by you when the world turns its back. One afternoon, as I sat in my garden, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there she was, Sana. Her eyes were red, her voice trembling. "Abu, I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was wrong. I didn't understand how much you were hurting. Can you forgive me?" I looked at her, the daughter who had once screamed about the inheritance, now standing vulnerable before me. My heart ached. Could I forgive? Could I trust again? I took a deep breath and smiled gently. "We'll take it one step at a time." As the months passed, I found peace, not because the mansion was gone, but because I reclaimed my life. I chose to let go of the bitterness that tried to chain me. I chose to forgive, but also to protect myself. I chose peace over greed, love over resentment, and I learned a lesson I wish I'd known earlier. Money can buy houses, land, and possessions, but it cannot buy respect. It cannot buy trust. It cannot buy the love that lasts beyond the balance sheet. So I say this to anyone listening. Respect matters more than money, and now they know it too. My story isn't just about a mansion, a will, or betrayal. It's about standing strong when those closest to you turn away. It's about knowing your worth, even when everyone else tries to define it by what you own. I'm not the same man I was when this began. I'm stronger, wiser, freer, and finally I'm at peace.